How do you do, everyone? This is Adam Mauser, Mishmash Men, and to my right, I have Mr. Dustin Labar.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Dustin.
Good afternoon.
Good day, sir.
Good day to you, sir.
So, welcome to Mishmash Men. This is our third real episode. We had an intro. We had the first two episodes. This is episode number 3. So, welcome to our podcast. As the name implies, it's a mishmash, a hodgepodge, a plethora of subjects, and we try to keep it things that we're keenly interested in, because if we weren't really interested in them, it wouldn't be interesting to anybody else as we're explaining
It's
it.
very fair.
Yeah.
Hopefully people enjoyed the first 2 episodes.
I hope so.
Yep.
I
We
hope
learned
so.
a lot of good stuff.
We did. We learned, and some of it applies.
Yeah. Body slams,
Yeah.
stone cold stunners,
The
trust and automation.
what was the move? The Montreal.
The Montreal screw job.
Yeah, that's Montreal screw
That's
job.
very important.
So today's episode, broken window fallacy. That's the topic, and that's what we'll call this episode. It's a little bit more than that. And if you recall, several months ago on another podcast, RFTB, at Tip RFTB, there was a trivia contest. And one of the questions I came up with was broken window fallacy. What does it have to do with in economics and policing and some other stuff? That
Okay.
was the question, and
Was that for the tiebreaker?
that was the
That was for
tiebreaker
the
trivia
tiebreaker.
question.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I wanted to do, and it's about Frederick Bastiat,
Okay.
and we'll talk about that for the next 30 minutes or so.
Let's do it.
All right,
I'm
let's go.
interested.
So Frederick Bastiat, who is a Frenchman, obviously a Frenchman.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of this guy ever before?
Never.
Okay.
So I'm going to be learning from scratch. I have no
Okay.
idea.
No worries. And he wrote the thing that he's most known for. There's really 2 things: his writing called The Law, and also this broken window fallacy. But who was he? Well, he was a French statesman, economist. He was the deputy to the French legislature around the same time as the French Revolution.
And that was around
1850 was when he died shortly after the law was put out as a book, but that was a collection of writings.
Okay.
So he wrote a series of these essays in response to a lot of the socialist ideas that were getting pushed forth as they were trying to form the new French government
Okay.
post-revolution and establish. So a lot of responses to that. And he was a well-read and learned man. He read a lot of John Locke, who's like your classical liberal. And when I say classical liberal, not like liberal when you think of a progressive or a Marxist or any person like that, but a classical liberal is one of the Libertarian Party type person. Okay. So a lot of these things that he was writing in response to that became the book, The Law, were, again, responses to that were big pushes within the French legislature. And he was warning everyone, it will lead to communism. Eventually, we're going to get to this tyrannical government.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. And that's kind of what happened anyway.
It seems to be a common theme where if you start leaning towards the socialist type of things, that's always something that people are very, especially like even now, very leery of. When you start leaning towards that communism and things like that follow, and it never works out well.
No, it doesn't.
typically.
In fact, it's a trend. It's cyclical. You can see it throughout history for sure.
So he would be like literally like there's somebody like equivalent to him today that's banging the drum for, hey, you guys don't want it to be like this. You know, when people are like saying we want things to be, more socialist, there's people obviously on the other side of that being like, trust me, you don't want anything like that. So he would be the mirror of somebody like that today, because it's happening today where younger people are like, oh, we want it to be
We want everything to be fair, et cetera.
and redistribution of wealth and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And that's human nature. It ends up being like that.
Yeah.
But a guy, not Rand Paul, but Ron Paul, if you've ever heard of him. Okay,
Yeah,
so
sure.
Ron Paul is kind of like probably the most outspoken libertarian-leaning guy
Okay.
that we've had in the past 20, 30 years. And I first saw him on the show called the Morton Downey Jr. show back in the late 80s, which was just a crazy show, crazy show. It was back when the talk show format was kind of like the Phil Donahue, but just on steroids.
Okay.
Kind of like that's when Oprah was starting to get big, but Milton Downey Jr. was kind of the late at night, kind of no rules,
Okay.
kind of shout fest.
Like a
But
Jerry Springer style?
it was not quite Jerry Springer
Okay, so it's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
in the spectrum of quote unquote talk shows.
Gotcha.
But I remember I distinctly remember this, seeing Ron Paul, and I thought, man, he's insane. But then, like, now I'm like, okay, everything he predicted is spot on.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of respect now. I've grown into it. And it's not just because my opinions change. It's just you become better informed about.
Sure.
And you see, like, things that people like Frederick Bastiat warn of. They're right.
Yeah.
They turn out to being right.
Yeah.
So some axioms. So an axiom is something that you presuppose. I have some base things that I am going into a new subject, but there are some things that I don't question.
Okay.
So axiom is, or you presuppose these things.
Okay.
Like, for instance, I presuppose that there is truth, and that's a safe axiom for most people anyway.
Okay.
For those that disagree, though, is my statement true or false? Yeah. You can't determine that.
Okay. Yeah.
So axiomatic from Frederick Bastiat is that life, liberty, and property are blessings and rights from God.
Okay.
Life, liberty, and property. So, that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness
Sure.
clause that's in the Declaration of Independence. It was kind of tweaked. That was the original.
Okay.
And then there was some changes made because of the whole slave issue.
Yeah.
And the founders did not want property to also include people.
Yes.
So the pursuit of happiness was substituted as that. So that one word is in there that carried a little bit of extra baggage they did not want in it.
Gotcha.
But those are rights bestowed by God and not by the government.
Gotcha.
The government does not bestow your right to life, liberty, or property.
Gotcha.
At all. Again, these are natural law type axioms. These are things that you assume that there is a natural law, that those things are for everyone.
Are there people, or I know what you're saying about the axioms, but are there people that would disagree with that statement? Like
Yes.
in dictatorships kind of situations?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They absolutely do disagree with that. And because it's assumed sometimes just culturally that, the government says, for instance, in today's world, the Second Amendment. Well, the Second Amendment guarantees my right to bear arms.
Right.
No. The Second Amendment recognizes your absolute right to be able to defend your life,
yourself.
liberty, and property.
Understood.
So that the Second Amendment actually says it's a body of negative liberties, and it says we the people, you and me, and everybody else in this nation, we restrict Congress from infringing upon our rights, including the right to bear arms.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
So those life, liberty, and property, they pre-exist law.
Okay.
That's assumption number one, axiom number one. That men institute government. So men gather together. And when I say men, I mean the gender neutral version of men.
Yep.
Men gather together and they form governments, and those governments institute laws that protect life, liberty, and property.
Understood.
That's why you have government. That's why you have laws. That justice has precise limits, and philanthropy does not have precise limits.
Okay.
So more on that in a bit. Well, if you just think about the welfare state.
Sure.
The welfare state, the purpose of that is to benefit others, the welfare of others. That's philanthropy.
Right.
So there's that area is not clearly defined, and because of that, you get into trouble with legal plunder. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
And a natural law, last axiom that I'll hit up, it's individualistic.
Okay.
So you have those same natural rights as I have, and in that natural law of life, liberty, and property, and that I can't violate yours. I can't take your stuff.
Right.
You can't take mine. You're not going to shoot me dead.
Right.
Otherwise, something bad's going to happen.
And that's why like murder is illegal.
Yes.
Yes. That's a law to protect your or our those three axioms that you described earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Got it. I'm learning a lot right now.
Oh, good.
I am learning a lot.
I hope this is interesting enough.
I'm riveted.
Okay.
I'm riveted.
All right. And hopefully you listeners out there.
And if you're listening and you're smarter than me, just deal with my stupid questions. It just is what it is.
No, please. I enjoy your questions. They help move it along. All right. So another axiom that man is fallible, that we can be bad people.
Sure.
So anyway, we create these governments and we create laws that protect life, liberty. The man is also fallible, so it stands to reason that a bad person could be in government, and a group of bad people can create laws that are essentially legal plunder. And when I say plunder, I don't mean just stealing money, but stealing your life and your liberty. So avoiding those, subverting those natural rights. The quintessential example of this is slavery. Slavery was legal in the United States.
Right.
Did that make it right? I say no.
Right.
I would argue no.
Yeah,
And I think you would too.
Yeah. I also say no, just to be clear. I don't want anybody to be like, Dusty never said no.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, move on it.
So let it be written. You could violate those natural rights of others, either individuals or a group of individuals. But always focus on the individual when you're talking about these rights, because it's very clear to understand, and it can be applied to a larger group. But you don't want to protect a group, because then you're going to start voiding an individual's natural rights.
Makes sense.
Through either greed or false philanthropy. That's it, like that welfare state. If you're going to take my money and give it to somebody else because you want to help them, well, that's legal plunder.
Sure.
Doesn't make it right.
Right.
But it could be legal.
Makes sense.
So to review, why do we institute government?
Why do we institute government? To protect our three natural laws.
Yes.
Yep. I didn't know there was going to be quizzes.
Yeah, that's probably not fair.
No, actually, I like it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll roll with it then.
Yeah.
So why do we need to protect them, our natural rights?
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Did you already tell me?
Oh, I told you, but guess again.
Why do we need to protect them?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Well, I'm not sure why we need... Well, obviously, besides the fact that I have those God-given rights, or the other God-given rights.
Because there's bad people.
Right. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because there's people that would infringe upon them.
Right.
Yes.
And they could be in positions of power.
Right.
That we put into power, and then now they're going to rob us blind.
Which I assume is why impeachment exists.
Impeachment exists, and why we vote, and we have, in some cases, term limits. And if we have bad men in government, you're going to have this legalized plunder, which is not good.
Do you think it's okay? So I think we'll both agree that there are probably most likely some bad people in the government of America.
Without a doubt.
Okay.
There's always been bad people.
So it seems like it's very challenging to impeach somebody. Well, I guess impeachment is bringing charges against, not necessarily removing from office, right? But it seems very difficult to remove people from office. It's not like the easiest thing. It seems like it would be an easier thing. Does that make sense?
It does. Let me say it back in another way. So it's incredibly challenging to actually impeach an office holder.
Yeah.
And I think by design they set it up that way, because what the founders didn't want was a resentful party in power that now just goes and gets the next guy in after them.
Yeah, I got you. I understand what you're saying.
So, and if you think of impeachment, you hit on something there. Impeachment is not necessarily like a conviction, if you will. It's like a grand jury.
Right.
So a grand jury they don't put you in jail, but if a grand jury convenes and, okay, well, we're going to bring charges, that grand jury decides that, and that's what the House's responsibility is.
So let me ask you this, and this may be getting too deep or too, deciding somebody's, let me just ask it, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. I think it's pretty clear that somebody like Nancy Pelosi's husband is getting some kind of insider trading information, and could probably be proved pretty easily. And because he is statistically better at stock market trading than Warren Buffett, statistically.
Than anybody that's ever walked.
So when she was asked, she was like, "Why would you even ask me that question? That's ridiculous." Like, well, we're asking that question because you're worth $200 million and you work in a job that you make $100,000 a year.
Right. So,
my brain says, well, this should be pretty, because they get people all the time. They're just like, well, you just insider, you did it. You're going to prison.
Right.
And now,
Martha Stewart.
Yeah. Like they find it's almost like it's like people are like worried about it, but they're clearly doing it. I mean, clearly. And then, but this is what I mean when I'm saying like that shouldn't somebody do something about it, at least to limit people from doing it, because that doesn't seem fair. You should have the same ability to make money in the stock market that I have, with no knowledge of laws being made or anything like that.
Right.
So that seems like an impeachable offense to me, to be like, I'm giving you or me or my husband or my wife the ability to, hey, this law is going to pass, and this company's going to do really good, and this company's going to do really bad. So that's kind of where my question stemmed from, is it seems really difficult, like that people won't even try. It's like, we'll just let it go.
Yeah, it is difficult, and I think we are hamstrung by the current state of a free press. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
So you would think, we're loosely associated with the topic, but this is a great discussion. We have been conditioned, I think, and I don't think by a nefarious group that's made us this way.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but it's certainly happened because it's the tendency, human nature. You tend to gravitate to this authority
Mm-hmm.
that says, well, the authority says this.
Right.
And people, they cry out for an authority, whether they want to admit it or not.
Yeah, I understand.
And this faulty understanding of what our Constitution is,
Mm-hmm.
it's literally constrains a government.
Mm-hmm.
And the states have to conform to a lot of those same constraints.
Right.
One of which is the Bill of Rights,
Mm-hmm.
the First Amendment being about a free press and free religion.
Mm-hmm.
That Congress literally has no jurisdiction.
Right.
They cannot, and jurisdiction means juris, meaning law,
Okay.
diction, speak. They can't speak on the matter legally.
Okay. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And so, so in the case of the First Amendment, they can't speak on the matter of an establishment of religion.
Right.
They can't, and a free press, they can't speak on that. But now there's like this, as a culture, I wouldn't say it's a nation, as a culture, we've just accepted over a period of years that the press, they're credentialed, right? Yeah. It's these people that they talk on the TV.
Yeah. So they must have some kind of authority,
and they're recognized. Like if you and I say, well, we're going to start a journalism business,
mm-hmm.
and we're going to ask questions, people are going to want to have our credentials. Well, what if I don't have credentials?
Right.
Why do I have to have credentials to ask you questions?
That's
Because
fair.
what I want to do is write an article
Right.
and publish it.
Sure.
There's nothing that says I can't do it, and I should be doing that.
Sure.
But we have gravitated toward this media conglomerate that is, this is what happened over a period of years, where those are the only trusted people, and anybody else, those are the weirdos.
Do you think that's changing now? Because
Yes.
there's a lot of independent news people is like the dumbest way to say it, journalists on like YouTube or things like that are actually truly what I would say are just actually reporting the news in a way that, like, matter of factly, being like, this is what happened, not this is not our version of what happened. This is just like what happened.
Yeah, I'm going to report on it.
I'm going to report on what happened, not my view of what happened, which tends to be, where those things in both like big news organizations, like whether it's CNN or if it's Fox, like it's a motivated. They're saying a thing specifically to either get your attention. How many times have you clicked on a news link when you're like, what could this possibly be about?
Yeah.
And you read it and you're like, oh my God, come on, guys.
Yeah, it was a waste of time.
Come on, this is the dumbest thing. But there are some people, I agree. I think it is changing, is why I asked you. I think it is kind of, people are having much less trust in that particular, like CNN and all those kind of things, because they know it's incredibly biased no matter which way. I mean, you could look at both sides of the coin and see that they're biased. So, and I appreciate the neutrality of some of these newer people that are doing some stuff like on YouTube or independent things. And there's a couple, I forget the name of it now, but there's like a website that you can actually like subscribe to journalists that you like.
You're right.
And you can like read their stuff if no matter what they're a part of. But
right.
So,
and let me offer this up though. There is no such thing as an unbiased view. Because you're always going to filter. There's always subjectivity that you're going to offer up. But the ones that you have to worry about, they're the ones that say, well, we're the unbiased ones. Those people over there,
right.
Well, clearly they're getting paid by so-and-so, and
right.
that's a rich guy, and you can't trust a rich guy. Like, well, wait a minute, who writes your checks?
Right.
There's one of six multimedia companies
right.
in the world that almost everything, and almost everybody's owned by Reuters.
Okay. By who?
Reuters.
Reuters.
Yeah. And so, like, okay, so who's the biased one? Who's
Right.
So anyway,
We're getting off topic. I apologize.
no, it's good. It's good information. Hopefully, we didn't lose like all of our listeners.
They're like, this guy asked some questions.
No, about because we started going about a rabbit trail that I love to talk about, but
Well, we save it for another episode.
yeah, I need to get some feedback on this. This is the kind of thing you want to hear because
Yeah.
I love talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested.
So, so broken window fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I talked about it during that trivia question.
I don't remember it specifically.
Yeah.
But
So the broken window fallacy goes like this, and what Bastiat does is he describes a little scene that we can all relate to, but you can extend it out to other areas.
Okay.
And it goes like this: a shopkeeper, he's got this tiny little shop, and an unruly kid, throws a rock, breaks the window,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's what is seen. And what happens is the shopkeeper now has to repair that window.
Mm-hmm.
He has to pay somebody, a glazer, to come out and fix the window. Somebody's got to produce the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Repairman comes out and actually reglazes the window, sets it in place. And then what the someone that's bent towards the socialist thinking says, bingo, you just improved the economy.
Okay.
And so that's great. That is good news.
Okay.
And in fact, the New Deal, most of the New Deal was nothing more than broken window methodology.
Okay.
We're going to take this, we're going to dig some holes and dig some ditches, and we're going to do these things.
Uh-huh.
And another team would come back and fill in those ditches and holes. But it's Keynesian economics, John Maynard Keynes, where I'm going to prime the pump of an economic engine.
Okay.
I'm going to pay some people to do some stuff. But what's not seen is if that window had not been broken,
Mm-hmm.
the shopkeeper, let's say he was going to go out and buy a brand new suit,
Mm-hmm. Understand.
and that new suit is now not going to get bought.
Right.
So it's the unseen effects of this broken window. So you can't rely on a destructive measure or a measure that at worst it's destructive, the broken window, or at best it's a neutral area. I'll come up with an example in a minute here, but the Great Depression is the quintessential example of, well, so how did we get out of the Great Depression?
Uh-huh.
Applied to that broken window fallacy. A lot of folks will say, well, World War II got us out of the Depression,
Okay.
because now all these things got destroyed and we built them back up.
Right.
And when we look at the data, without considering all of the factors, you could assume that that's a true statement. But that falls under, there's an informal logical fallacy called post hoc ergo propter hoc.
Okay.
Because of this, therefore, after this, therefore, because of that.
Okay.
So just because something happens after something else doesn't mean it was the cause.
Okay.
So every time I carry an umbrella into work, it rains. Does me carrying my umbrella, cause it to rain?
Gotcha.
No, it does not.
Right.
So that's a nice, ridiculous example
Mm-hmm.
of post hoc ergo propter hoc. Just because the Great Depression ended, does not mean, after World War II, that does not mean that World War II was the reason for that.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
Now, what did bring us out of that Great Depression was we had a workforce that was not mobilized, but then they got immediately mobilized
Mm-hmm.
and prepped for war. So you had a bunch of guys that they had double-digit inflation.
Right.
And then now they're getting paid, and it removed a lot of economic uncertainty.
Okay.
Because now we're building and we're constructing and we're producing things.
Specifically, it's like tool and die makers and people that were making bullets and guns and all these kind of
Right.
trades for specifically for the purpose of building things for the war.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons why the U.S. was such an economic powerhouse, besides the fact that by our very nature, who settled the United States and how it got built, and our Constitution, if you think about it, the entire industrial world was completely decimated during World War II.
Right.
And then we were about the only economic industrial nation that was left standing. And so that's why we proliferated everywhere and
Gotcha.
produced a lot of stuff very quickly.
Why is that? Why were we the only? Because we were in the middle of the industrial era.
Because where World War II was fought, in Europe and in Asia.
Oh, makes sense. Well, that makes sense. That's easy enough to understand.
So that was the big reason why there was this big shoot up.
Sure.
And we had a lot of productive people that were, engaged. When you go to war and you come back, you're like, well, I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore. I'm really excited about like a job.
Yeah.
And no one's shooting me.
Yeah. This is much better.
Yeah.
This is much, much, much better.
So, a lot of how we got into that depression it's very interesting because when you look at the numbers, that when it was still a recession, if you will, 29 to 30 to 33, there was a contraction of banks and of currency. So bank deposits and currency that was in circulation by about a third.
It contracted down a third.
It was reduced.
Gotcha.
And so who was in charge of that? Well, that was the Fed, even though Congress is constitutionally they're responsible rather to coin and mint money and set the value of that money.
Okay.
But they delegate that to the Fed.
The Fed.
That's a good Ron Paul topic right there. But at no point could the Fed were they not in a position where they could have changed that.
Okay.
And then after 33, that's when the New Deal starts in earnest. The Smoot-Hawley tariffs were incurred, and inflation.
The Smoot-Hawley tariffs were.
We'll have to save that for another topic.
We'll save it for another time.
Yeah. So it was Congress trying to do something.
Okay.
And what they did was very bad.
Okay.
Basically, that's the thing that Bastiat warns about is like taxing.
Sure.
Increasing taxes to try to solve this problem. Well, what it does is it discourages certain things.
Sure.
It discourages trade.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So we'll talk about Smoot-Hawley and maybe the Depression in another episode.
That's a great topic.
But I forget where I was going with that. But so double-digit inflation after Smoot-Hawley and after the New Deal starts, and it did not go back down until the run-up to World War II.
Okay.
So we were in double-digit inflation just floating around. We had these reduced number of banks, reduced number of currency, reduced number of bank deposits. It was just a disaster. And then that's how we got out of World War II. It was not these constructive acts following destructive acts of World War II that got us out.
I understand what you're saying. Okay, that makes sense. That's very interesting. Because I think if you talk to most people, they would say that World War II is the reason we got out of the Great Depression, just like as a matter of factly kind of statement.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a nuanced thing, but it wasn't the destructive act. And you can point to that broken window fallacy and it's a very clear example of how we can fall into that trap where it sounds like, oh, well, it's good for the economy if this this guy's window gets broken, this one aspect, but then you're losing value. And so when you look at a free market, the idea of a free market is it gets blamed a lot for a lot of economic ills, the free market, capitalism.
Yeah, I understand.
But a truly free market doesn't have a press agent at all. They don't have a media conglomerate that's looking out for their interests. The free market is truly free.
Right.
And it's the free exchange of goods and services for our mutual benefit.
Right.
I pay you to scrub my driveway.
Right.
And you're producing something that I want, we agree on that price, and both of us are happy at the end of it.
Right.
But if someone says, like an HOA says, well, Adam, you got to have a clean driveway, and here's our driveway cleaner, you got to pay him.
Yeah.
What if I don't want to?
Right.
And then now I've got to fork over money to you, and of course you're not going to work your hardest.
Yeah.
There's time after time you can see these these examples of socialist ideas.
Right.
That permeate, that sound like a good idea, this false philanthropy.
Right.
That in the end just lead to totalitarianism.
It's interesting that competition is generally what is driving that, and that people that don't like competition are always the people that are let's just set one price for everybody. But my dad would tell me back when he was younger, it's they had gas wars to be who can have the cheapest gas prices as a competition. And that's kind of the way everything is in every job or anything you do, you're always looking at somebody that can do it. If your goal is to buy something, you're trying to buy the highest quality whatever for the lowest possible price, and that is essentially what it is, because you get the option to choose between many people, and you'd be like, man, I'm working with 3 other guys and their prices are this. If you were this, we can work together. So part of it is like not wanting competition, but that's what makes it fun. Like that's that's why there's some people that like to go car shopping and some people that do not. You know what I mean? Because you're essentially, especially before the internet and there was prices, like you would go in to a car salesman and there were guys that were like, I love this. I'm going to get the best price on this car. I'm going to beat this guy. And that car salesman's like, I'm going to get the most, my bonus, whatever.
Right.
So that's like an interesting thought that I was just having as you were talking about that. It's like just purely competition, like free market, just, it promotes, maybe this is wrong. It promotes the people that are hardworking, very competitive to like rise up and make something of themselves, versus if you're not that way, it's going to be much harder for you to succeed. Yeah. Kind of situation.
And it's been tried so many times to do one and then the other, and you can compare one country to another. You compare different groups that have tried the same, different ways of doing the same thing.
Right.
One that is quote unquote fair, socialism.
Right.
And one that is kind of a dog eat dog, may the best man win type of mindset. And what improves time and time again, that's proven, the free market is always superior, always been demonstrated to be superior. There's been there was an economist, and he did one of those visual, maybe we can find this, and maybe when we post this to YouTube, link to this guy's video.
Yeah.
But he talks about the history of the world and the poverty level of just your average person over time. And then when, especially the United States, when it comes on the scene, and in how that small d democracy takes foot, and these monarchies disappear. They get overthrown through World War I and World War II. The economic improvement for everybody, poverty goes down, people's health improves.
Sure.
Everyone gets better off. And John Kennedy had a great quote about a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
It lifts all boats, and you can argue that, well, this would be more fair if we did it this way, but fair to whom?
Right.
And who are these better angels that we have in government?
Right.
That are not necessarily interested in Adam Mauser's economic interests or Dusty Labar's economic interests, that are now going to tell us how we have to spend our money.
Right.
And that's where it gets dangerous. And these better angels, they never exist. In fact, what you find are some greedy people gravitate towards government.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was there's a lot. We could talk about this as its own episode, but like just stuff like that, like governmental.
Oh, yeah.
But somebody was talking, I heard that, some people don't think that it's fair for somebody like Elon Musk to have so much money. The counter argument to that is he probably is one of the smartest people in the world. And because of his extreme work ethic and unrelenting desire to innovate, that he makes the world better.
Yes.
So, so the question is like, does he deserve that money? And but he works, and creates and sends, as a private company, sends rockets into space and does like crazy things like that. So there has to be people like him to raise the bar.
Right.
In my opinion, this is Dusty talking.
Yeah, you're spot on.
So, is it right that is it fair that he has $50 billion? I mean, fair to who? I mean, is it, it's fair. I mean, it's, if you think about all the stuff that he's done, like he created, maybe you'll agree, 25 years ago, you'd be like, an electric car doesn't make any sense. You can't have one that makes sense. You can't do it. It won't run long enough. It won't be this. It won't do this. It won't do this. And he pretty much did that.
Right.
He figured out how to do it through trial and error and lots of money and all this.
And people are buying them.
And people still buy it.
Yeah.
But also, which is this free market thing, it's definitely caused other car manufacturers to step the game up and make their cars and their electric cars more efficient, better, run better, run longer, all that kind of stuff. So, that's what I like about that, like the free market in general, is that guy, like you can't outwork that guy, I don't think.
No.
So the people that you can outwork, those crazy people that won't stop working and need to innovate, that's how we have all this awesome stuff. Like that's why we have phones, and that's why we have all this crazy cool stuff that we all take for granted. So I think that's super important. And which is why when people, it's like upsetting to hear people be like, well, we should redistribute wealth so everybody, well, the lazy people are still going to be lazy,
Right.
but you're de-incentivizing the really like the go-getters to not do that stuff because there's not a benefit. Like right now, if you want to create something, there's a benefit to that.
Right.
Because you can run off with it and you can be whatever. You can be Elon Musk or whatever. So,
one thing on that, very innovative, but someone like that also is willing to take risk.
correct. Yes.
And it's his risk that he's taking by whatever it is that he's doing,
Right.
and whatever it is he's done. He's accepted the risk that if it fails, I'm going to be out of everything.
Sure.
My whole life is in this company or these companies,
Right.
and now I've lost that. And any entrepreneur, they know that better than anybody
Sure,
else
100%.
about something that they start. There's the risk that I'm going to lose it, and I'm going to lose it all, every bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so willing to accept risk, and that's where the socialists will miss that little nuance,
Right.
and it's probably one of the biggest things.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. I don't know if you could talk to a successful entrepreneur that hasn't taken a risk that's like scary, like incredibly scary. Because he basically like Elon, I'll just use him as an example, but he bought Twitter, which
Yeah.
could be, it could be like $30 billion totally down the drain.
Right.
But he thought it can be he thinks it could be something better. So he's taking a huge risk
Right.
where nobody else was willing to, everybody was just going to complain about it and just move on. But he's willing to take that risk. So I think that's super important.
Yeah.
So, but like you said, that's when you said the saying that rising tide rise all ships. That's what I was thinking of. Like if you have somebody that's like that, it does raise the bar for everybody to like compete with.
Absolutely.
Which makes things better.
Right.
And you're even like somebody dumb like me. I get cool stuff
Right.
in my daily life because somebody like him has taken a huge risk. Whatever it may be. My phone or whatever it is, whatever kind of cool technology that I have, or a car that I buy that's a hybrid, or whatever I buy. Because somebody has taken a risk and taken a shot at it. So,
Right.
So I don't know if that's on par with the broken window fallacy, but it makes sense.
It's all tied. It's all cut from the same cloth.
Sure.
There's this intersection of economics and law that's extremely interesting, and there's a lot of effect in it. And these are things that are connected, but a lot of times we get told that they're not connected, disassociated from those unseen effects.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be to suit an agenda. It might be out of ignorance. We don't know what it is. I'm not here to say that on this podcast. Maybe another episode.
Yeah.
But at any rate, they are connected, and it's something to think about.
Yeah.
So that's all I had for broken window fallacy. It was more about Frederick Bastiat, but broken window fallacy sounds a whole lot sexier.
It's sexier, but it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
I was really fascinated, especially just some of the little nuanced things you said today, which would even I'm embarrassed to admit, but like the Second Amendment, the way you described it is not the way I would have explained it to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, even like something when you tie it into that is very interesting, or just the three inalienable rights that we have. So it was very interesting to me.
Oh, good. Thanks. I
Yes,
hope
sir.
I hope the listeners enjoyed it.
Well, until next time,
Yeah. Until next time.
Mishmash Men, M cubed.
M cubed.
Have a good day, everybody.
See you next week.